Mirabelle didn't utter a word when her boss shoved her into that wall. But the man who walked through that door 2 seconds later made Martin Pill wish he had never been born. Mirabelle Wells was a maid, 5 months pregnant, and carrying a secret that was about to turn a casino empire upside down. What happened next was the last thing anyone in that hallway saw coming. This channel is where stories like Mirabelle's live. The ones about ordinary people who refuse to stay small, and the unexpected love that finds them in the middle of the fire. Subscribe now, because the next story is already waiting for you. Mirabelle did not scream. That was the first thing everyone got wrong about Mirabelle Wells. When Mr. Martin Pill grabbed her arm in the back hallway of the Golden Spire Casino and sneered down at her with that look she had seen too many times before, Mirabelle did not scream. She did not cry. She looked him dead in the eye, all 5 feet 4 inches and 240 pounds of her. And she said very quietly, "Let go." Martin tittered, like he actually tittered. He was the floor manager of the Golden Spire Casino, which meant he wore a pressed uniform and carried a radio, and believed with everything in him that the staff beneath him were furniture. Mirabelle had been mopping the east corridor when he found her. Her gray uniform was damp at the collar, and her braids were tucked under her cap. She had been on shift for 6 hours, and her lower back had been aching since hour 3, which was something she had learned to ignore because the baby did not care about her schedule. "You think you can talk to me like that?" Martin's grip tightened. "You're the help. You don't talk back to me." "Sir, don't." He stepped closer. The hallway was narrow. The nearest camera was at the corner, 30 feet away, and it had been broken for 2 weeks. Mirabelle knew this because she was the one who had reported it, and nobody had fixed it. "You've been making trouble since the day you started, walking around here like you own the place." "I mop the place," she said. "That is different." He reached out and knocked her cart sideways. Cleaning supplies clattered. Her mop handle swung and hit the wall, and that was when he grabbed her shoulder and shoved. Not a soft push, not a warning touch. A real shove, to right into the wall, and Mirabelle's back hit the plaster, and the air left her lungs in one sharp burst. Everything in the hallway went very still. Mirabelle's hand flew to her stomach. Instinct. Pure instinct. She pressed her palm flat against the small round swell that her loose uniform had been hiding for 4 months, and she stared at Martin Pill with something in her eyes that was not quite fear and not quite fury, but something older and more dangerous than both. Martin did not notice her hand. "I will have you out of this building by morning. Are we clear?" Mirabelle said nothing. Martin turned to walk away, and that was when the door at the end of the hallway opened. Not the staff door, not the supply room, the private door. The black one, the one without a handle on the outside, and the one that Mirabelle had been told on her very first day of work that she was never, under any circumstances, to look at directly. The man who stepped through it was not tall in the way that people expected powerful men to be tall. He was average height, lean, with sharp cheekbones, and black hair that fell slightly across his forehead. He wore a dark jacket with no tie. His shoes made no sound on the floor. His eyes, when they landed on the scene in the hallway, did not widen. They simply stopped on Mirabelle's hand, pressed flat against her stomach. Stopped on Martin Pill, standing 3 feet from her with red in his cheeks and satisfaction in his posture. Stopped on the cleaning supplies scattered across the floor. His name was Woo Seung-hyuk, but inside the Golden Spire Casino, in the city of Cheongju, Korea, everyone called him Mr. Woo, and they said it the way people say the name of a storm they can see coming from very far away. He owned the casino. He owned the building the casino was in. He owned the 2 buildings beside it. He was 29 years old, and he had never once raised his voice inside his own establishment, which was more frightening than if he had. Martin Pill spun around. The color left his face so fast it was almost interesting to watch. Mr. Wu, I was just... She was... Mirabelle. Wu's voice was calm. Completely, unnervingly calm. He was looking at Martin, but he said her name. Are you hurt? Mirabelle blinked. In 4 months of working at the Golden Spire, Woo Seung-hyuk had said 6 words to her. She had counted. She knew this because she was the kind of woman who paid attention to things that other people overlooked, and one of the things she had noticed about Mr. Wu was that he remembered names. Every single member of his staff. Maintenance, kitchen, security, front desk. He knew their names, and he used them, quietly and precisely, the way a careful person handles something valuable. I'm fine, she said. That is not what I asked. She paused. Her back hurt. Her stomach had not changed. The baby was fine. She was almost certain the baby was fine. She would check. She would be careful. But her shoulder, where she had hit the wall, would probably bruise. My shoulder, she said. A little. Wu looked at Martin. Martin opened his mouth. Don't, Wu said. One word. The same word Mirabelle had said, and somehow it landed with 10 times the weight. So I'd go to my office and wait. Mr. Wu, I can explain. I know you can. Wu stepped forward. Not fast, not threatening. Just forward. The way a door closing is not threatening, but is still final. That is why I want you in my office. So I can hear it. He glanced once more at Martin. Now. Martin went. The hallway was quiet. Mirabelle bent down and started picking up the spilled supplies. Wu crouched across from her, actually crouched, in his good jacket, and back at her, completely unbothered by back at her, completely unbothered by being stared at. You don't have to do that, she said. You didn't have to be in this hallway getting shoved into a wall either, he said. And yet. Mirabelle took the bottle. Their fingers did not touch. And start cataloging small details about Wu. Start cataloging small details about Woo Seung-hyuk at close range. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow. His hands were steady. He smelled like nothing at all, which was unusual for a man in his position who could afford to smell like anything. How long? He asked. He was looking at her stomach. Mirabelle went very still. Well, how long have you been? 4 months, she said. Because there was no point lying. He had already seen her hand. He was not the kind of man who missed things. Something moved across his face. Not surprise, not disgust. Something slower than both. He stood, and she stood, and they were facing each other in the narrow hallway with the broken camera overhead, and the Golden Spire hummed around them. The distant sound of the casino floor, on cards and chips and laughter, and the specific kind of hope that lives in gambling halls. The night of the staff dinner, he said. December. You left early. Mirabelle said nothing. Her throat had done something strange. You weren't feeling well, he continued. He was not asking. He was remembering. I saw you at the elevator. You noticed that. I notice a great deal of things, Mirabelle. She had not told anyone. Not her co-workers. Not her mother back home. Not the clinic doctor who had confirmed it, and given her vitamins, and said congratulations, in a voice that was trying very hard to be cheerful. She had been managing this alone, the way she had managed most things in her life. Quietly, steadily, one shift at a time. She had also not told Woo Seung-hyuk. She had not told him because 4 months ago, the two of them had spoken exactly once. At the staff dinner that the casino hosted every December for all 300 employees. The dinner where he had sat at the head of the long table and made a speech about the year in a mix of Korean and English, and somehow managed to sound like he meant it. And afterward, when the room had gotten loud and warm and someone had put on music, Mirabelle had been standing at the window with a glass of juice, not alcohol she rarely drank, looking out at the city lights, and Wu had come to stand beside her. They had talked. That was the whole of it. They had just talked about the city lights and what the city looked like from the roof, and whether the small restaurant 2 streets over was still good, because she had mentioned that the jjigae was the best she had ever tasted, and he had looked genuinely pleased to hear it, like she had said something kind about someone he loved. And then it had gotten late, and the room had spun slightly, not from anything she drank, just from the warmth or from something else she was not examining. And she had said goodnight and gone to the elevator. And something had passed between them in that hallway, soft and unspoken, that Mirabelle had spent 4 months pretending she had imagined. "You should have told me," Wu said now. His voice was still quiet, still even. But there was something underneath it, something taut. "From your contract," he said, "does not forbid me from—" "Your contract," he said, "does not include anything about pregnancy. I have read every clause. Why would you—" "Because this morning, before I walked through that door," he paused. "Just a fraction of a second. My head of HR sent me a flag on your file. Martin Pill filed a performance complaint against you. Yesterday." Mirabelle's stomach dropped. Not the baby. Just her own stomach, cold and sudden. "He filed it yesterday," she repeated. "Yes." Wu's jaw did something that was not quite moving, but was not quite still. One day, after I informed him that I was reviewing the staffing structure of the cleaning department, which he oversees, he looked down the hallway in the direction Martin had gone, so he was trying to remove you before I could review your record. Why would your staffing review matter to him? Wu looked at her, and Mirabelle, who was smart and observant, and had been paying attention for 4 months, understood. A beat too slowly. A beat that felt like the floor tilting. What he wasn't saying. "You already knew," she said. "About the baby. Before, just now." He was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "HR tracks medical leave requests," he said. "Jock and prenatal clinic appointments on company insurance. I saw the record 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks. Her voice cracked. She pulled it back. "And you said nothing. It was not my place. But you reviewed my contract." "Yes." "And you checked Martin's complaint the moment it came in." "Yes." "And tonight, you came through that specific door." She looked at the black door, still slightly ajar. "Which is not a door you use on Tuesdays. I know your schedule, so I clean this corridor." Woo Seong-hyuk looked at Mirabelle Wells, and for the first time since she had known him, something in his face did not stay still. Something in his eyes shifted, and it was not cold, and it was not calculated, and it was nothing at all like what she expected from the man they called a storm. "No," he said quietly. "It is not a door I use on Tuesdays." The casino hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened and closed. The broken camera watched them with its dead eye. Mirabelle picked up the last of her supplies and put them back on the cart. Her hands were steady. She was proud of her hands for being steady. "What will you do about Martin?" she asked. "That," Wu said, "is already handled. He has friends here, people who owe him." "They owe him less than they owe me." She nodded. She turned her cart toward the east wing. And then she stopped, because something had been sitting at the back of her throat since the moment he crouched on the floor beside her. And she was not a woman who left things unsaid. "Woo Seong-hyuk," she said. Not Mr. Wu. His full name, the way she had heard him introduced at the December dinner. She heard him go, still behind her. "Why did you come through that door tonight?" The silence lasted 4 seconds. "Because," he said, "I was told you were on shift in this corridor." Mirabelle did not turn around. She pushed her cart forward into the east wing and let the silence say everything that neither of them was ready to say out loud. Behind her, she could hear nothing. Not his footsteps. Not the door closing. Just the hum of the golden spire, alive and electric, and the quiet sound of something beginning. Martin Pill was gone by 9 o'clock the next morning. Not fired. That was the part that surprised everyone. He was reassigned. Moved to an affiliate property 4 hours away. Effective immediately, with a note in his file that said, "Conduct review pending," and nothing else. No announcement. No scene. Just his office cleared by 8:30, and his parking pass deactivated at 9. The staff talked about it for 3 days. Mirabelle said nothing. She showed up to her shift, clocked in, and mopped the east corridor like she always did. Her cartwheels squeaked at the same spot they always squeaked. She wore her uniform and kept her braids up, and didn't think about black doors or quiet voices, or the way a man could crouch on a floor in a good jacket and make her feel, for the first time in a long time, like she was worth crouching for. She thought about it constantly. The Golden Spire was not small. It had 4 casino floors, 2 restaurants, a hotel tower, a rooftop event space, and enough staff that you could go a full week without seeing the same face twice. So Mirabelle had spent her first 3 months learning the building the way she learned everything. Carefully, methodically, one wing at a time. She knew which elevators were slow and which were fast, which vending machine on the 3rd floor gave 2 items for the price of 1 if you pressed B7 twice, and which door in the east corridor was never used on Tuesdays, until it was. And on Thursday, 2 days after Martin disappeared, and 4 days before the thing that changed everything, Mirabelle was in the rooftop garden. It was part of her rotation. The rooftop needed cleaning every Thursday morning before the event team came in to set up. She had her cart, her gloves, her braids under her cap, and a breakfast wrap from the staff cafeteria that she ate standing up while looking out at the city of Cheongju spread below her like a quilt. She liked Cheongju. That surprised her. She had not expected to like Korea. She had come because of the job. The contract was good. The pay was good. The company housing was clean and warm. And she had not come looking for anything else. She had not come looking for a December staff dinner where someone would say something real to her by a window, or for the particular way a city looked at 5 in the morning when the sky was turning and the casino lights were just starting to fade. You eat breakfast up here every Thursday. She did not jump. She had heard the rooftop door open. She was just surprised that it was him. Woo Seong-hyuk stood at the edge of the garden terrace, hands in his pockets, looking at her with the expression she was beginning to understand, was his version of a smile. Not the movement of his mouth, just a certain quality in his eyes. An attention. "You're tracking my schedule," she said. "You tracked mine." I cleaned the corridor. "Sit down," she said, mostly because the alternative was standing there being watched, which was doing things to her equilibrium that she could not afford. "I have another wrap if you want it." He sat on the actual garden bench, which was a little damp from the morning, and he did not check it first. He just sat. And Mirabelle handed him a breakfast wrap from her cart bag, and he took it, and they sat there, 5 floors above Cheongju, eating breakfast at 6 in the morning, like this was a thing they did. "How is your shoulder?" he asked. "Better." "The bruise?" "Fading." She glanced at him sideways. "You really did read my file." "I read everyone's file when something concerning comes to my attention." "Am I a concerning thing?" He took a bite of the wrap, chewed, but considered this with more seriousness than the question probably deserved. "You are a woman who was shoved into a wall in my building," he said, "while carrying something that belongs to both of us, and I did not stop it before it happened." The last 5 words arrived in Mirabelle's chest, like a stone dropped into still water. She felt the rings of it move outward. "You couldn't have known. I should have dealt with Martin 2 months ago. I had 3 other complaints about him from different staff members. I was..." A pause. "Being careful. Methodical. I did not want to act on incomplete information. And now? And now a woman I care about was hurt in my building. Methodical is for when the stakes are abstract." He looked at her steadily. "The stakes are not abstract anymore." Mirabelle set down her wrap. "Woo Seong-hyuk," she said carefully. "What are you saying to me?" "I'm saying," he said, equally carefully, "and that December was not something I imagined, and that I have spent 4 months deciding whether to say that out loud." Why 4 months? Because you are my employee, and you are entitled to a workplace where you do not have to navigate anything complicated from me. And because I was not sure, he stopped. Not sure of what? Not sure you felt the same thing. Mirabelle looked at the city, at the morning light catching the tops of the buildings, at a city she had not expected to love, in a country she had not expected to stay in, sitting next to a man she had not expected to understand. I do, she said. Feel the same thing. The morning was quiet. The baby, he said. I want you to know. Whatever you decide, whatever you need. I am not going anywhere. You don't, I know I don't have to. He turned to look at her. I want to. And Mirabelle, and who had been managing everything alone, the baby and the shifts, and the aching back, and the 4 months of pretending that December had not mattered, felt something unlock in her chest. Not dramatically, not with any great noise, just a door opening, the smallest possible crack of light. I have a doctor's appointment next Tuesday, she said. If you wanted to know, I want to know. It's at 2 in the afternoon. I'll be there, she nodded. She picked up her wrap and finished it. He finished his. The bird came back and judged them again from the railing, and this time, Mirabelle decided that was fine, because she felt, for the first time in a long time, like something was actually going right. She should have known then that the universe was only winding up. The thing happened on Saturday. Mirabelle was coming off the night shift. 2 in the morning, East Corridor done, cart returned, uniform changed to her own clothes. She was in the staff elevator going down to the lobby level when it stopped on the 2nd floor, and 2 men got in, and she recognized them immediately, the way you recognize a smell that means danger before your brain catches up to explain why. They were not casino staff. Their clothes were right, casino adjacent, the kind of neat and neutral that said business without saying what kind. But she had been in this building long enough to know its people, and these 2 were not its people. They looked at her. She looked ahead. 3rd floor maintenance hall, one of them said, in Korean to the other. Not to her. She was, as far as they were concerned, invisible. The shipment moves Sunday. Wu changed the schedule. Why? Don't know. But Hanshi said, a pause. There's a complication. The elevator reached the lobby. Mirabelle walked out. She did not run. She did not look back. She walked through the lobby at her regular pace, pushed through the staff exit, and stood in the cold outside, with her heart doing something loud and inconvenient. She had understood that conversation. Her Korean was not perfect. She had been learning for 8 months, but it was good enough. Good enough to know that something was moving through the Golden Spire on Sunday night that was not supposed to move through the Golden Spire. She also understood something else. If those men had realized she understood them, she would not be standing outside in the cold right now. She pulled out her phone. She started to type a message to Wu and then stopped. Because she did not know, she did not fully know, whether the thing those men were moving through his casino was something he knew about, or something he was part of, or something being done without him. She knew about the Mafia. She was not naive. She had heard the whispers about the Golden Spire before she took the job, about who owned it and what that meant. But she had told herself that rumors were rumors, and that the man at the December dinner who talked about the city lights and listened like she was worth listening to could not be the same man the rumors described. She stood in the cold for a long time. Then she went home, lay down in her small, warm company apartment, put one hand on her stomach, and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. She had an appointment in 4 days. She had decided to trust something she was going to need to decide how much. Sunday arrived without asking permission. Mirabelle spent the morning pretending to be normal. She made porridge. She watered her one plant, a stubborn little succulent named Stephen, who had survived 3 near deaths and 2 international moves in her bag. She reread the conversation in the elevator 17 times in her head, trying to find a version of it that meant something ordinary. There was no ordinary version. When she went into work at noon, she had picked up a half shift to cover for a coworker who was sick. The casino was its usual Saturday night rolling into Sunday energy. Tired dealers, bright lights, the particular kind of desperate optimism that filled rooms where people were hoping money would save them. Mirabelle cleaned. She paid attention. 3rd floor. The maintenance hall ran the full length of the east wing, service doors on both ends. She cleaned the public-facing part. Some of the back section, behind the locked gray door, was technically off-limits to cleaning staff except on Monday mornings. She knew this. She had never questioned it. Today, she questioned it. She was making her second pass of the corridor when she saw the gray door was not fully closed. Not open. Not obviously open. Just not latched. A thread of darkness visible where the seal should have been. She did not go in. She almost went in. Instead, she walked to the nearest house phone, dialed 0, and asked the front desk to connect her to Mr. Wu's assistant. The assistant, a man named Bach, who wore the same expression of polite suffering every day, and whom Mirabelle had once seen eat an entire lunch in 4 minutes between crises, picked up immediately. "Mr. Bach," Mirabelle said quietly, "I need to leave a message for Mr. Wu. Please tell him that the 3rd floor maintenance hall east needs a walkthrough today. Today. Before tonight." A pause. "I'll pass it along, Miss Wells." "Thank you." She hung up and went back to her cart. 40 minutes later, she was in the stairwell between the 3rd and 4th floors, taking her designated break, sitting on the 3rd step up, eating a tangerine, when she heard voices below her. She knew one of them. Woo Seong-hyuk. He was talking in rapid Korean, low and clipped, to someone she could not see. She caught fragments, enough. The words, "not authorized," and "who gave the order," and then something harder, something she did not have vocabulary for, but the tone carried just fine. Then, "Who left the door?" A male voice, not Bach, someone else. "We don't know yet." "Find out. Tonight." And the shipment? A long silence. "Halt it," Wu said. "Pull the team. I want every person who was on that list in my office by 10. Footsteps. Going away. Not toward her. Mirabelle sat very still on her stairwell step, tangerine in her hand, and realized that her warning had landed, that Wu had received it, had moved on it, and was shutting something down that someone else had started in his building without his knowledge. Which meant one of two things. Either Woo Seong-hyuk was exactly what the kind version of the rumors said, a man who ran a complicated business but drew hard lines, or he was extremely skilled at performing the version of himself that would make her trust him. Mirabelle had always been good at reading people. She had also always been wrong about exactly one person at a time, even when she was aware that her record here was imperfect. She finished her tangerine and went back to work. At 7 that evening, she got a message on the staff internal system, not from Mr. Bach, from Wu directly. "Can you come to the rooftop after your shift?" Mirabelle stared at that message for a full minute. "Yes," she typed back. The rooftop at 9:15 was dark and cold, and the city below them was just starting to come alive. Restaurants filling, cabs moving, the casino lights below throwing soft patterns across the stone terrace. Wu was already there when she arrived. He was standing at the railing, and he turned when he heard the door. And the first thing she noticed was that he looked tired. Not the kind of tired that came from working late. The kind that came from something going wrong that you had been trying to stop. "You knew about the 3rd floor," he said. Not an accusation, a statement. "I heard 2 men talking in the elevator Friday night," she said. "I understood enough. You could have told me immediately. I didn't know yet whether I should." He was quiet. He turned back to the railing and looked at the city. "That's fair," he said. She moved to stand beside him, leaving a foot of space between them. "What was it?" "The shipment. Something that should not be in my building." His voice was tight. Someone inside my organization has been using the East Maintenance Hall to move things they were never authorized to move, using my name, using my connections. He paused. I have been watching for this for 6 months. Someone has been building a shadow operation inside the Golden Spire and routing it through channels that look like mine, but aren't. Someone on your team? Yes. Do you know who? I have a strong suspicion. His jaw shifted. I needed one more piece of evidence, and the door being left open tonight. That was careless. Whoever left it did it on purpose to move the timeline before I could stop it. But they didn't know you were watching. Mirabelle looked at him. You've been watching too, she said slowly. For 6 months, which is 2 months before you started here, yes. Which means when I got this job. Your background check was thorough, he said. Not because of suspicion, because everyone's is. But you, Mirabelle, he turned to face her fully. You passed every check, without anything unusual. You were exactly what your application said. And that in this building right now is rarer than you would think. She absorbed this. You trusted me, she said. I noticed you, he said. That first. And then I trusted you. And then December happened and I didn't trust myself. The city glittered. A plane crossed overhead. Woo Seung-hyuk, Mirabelle said. So I'm going to ask you something and I need you to answer it honestly. Yes. The things they say about you, about this building, about what it is. He did not look away. Some of it is true. Some of it is exaggeration. Some of it is what other people decided to believe because they needed a story. Which parts are true? The part where I inherited something I did not choose, and spent years trying to make it into something I could be responsible for. A pause. The part where I have made decisions I cannot fully defend. The part where the Golden Spire is cleaner than it was when I got it, but not clean enough. Another pause. The weight of it sitting right there on the railing between them. The part where I am trying. That's a lot of parts. Yes, but you halted the shipment. The moment I knew. And you came through the black door on Tuesday because someone told you I was in the corridor. Yes. Who told you? He was quiet for 3 seconds. Beck. He monitors the building sensors during the evening hours, and he saw Martin Pill's swipe card used in the East Corridor at the same time as yours. He knows Martin's history. Woo's voice tightened slightly. Beck has been with me for 7 years. He looks after things. Mirabelle thought about Mr. Bach, who ate lunch in 4 minutes, and answered phones on the first ring, and revised her mental file on him significantly. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay. She turned to lean against the railing, while looking back at the rooftop, at the little garden that was her Thursday morning breakfast spot, at the door she had come through, at all the ordinariness of this strange situation. I'm not going to say this is simple. It is not simple. You have a complicated life, and I am having your baby, and I barely know you. And I am. She took one breath. I am someone who has managed everything alone for a very long time, and I am trying to learn what it looks like to not do that. I am also, he said quietly, learning what that looks like. Then we can be bad at it together, she said. For now. Something moved across his face, that slow thing, not quite a smile, but warmer than anything she had seen there before. For now, he agreed. It was not a promise. It was something better. It was a beginning with its eyes open, which is the only kind of beginning worth having. 3 days later, Mirabelle went to her Tuesday appointment. Woo was there, on time. In the waiting room of the prenatal clinic, sitting in one of the small plastic chairs with his jacket folded over his knee, and a parenting magazine he was clearly not reading, but had clearly picked up to avoid looking like he was simply sitting there waiting. Mirabelle looked at him in that waiting room and felt something she had no word for. Something that was half terror and half the exact opposite of terror. You read about it, she said, nodding at the magazine. "I have been reading about it for 6 weeks," he said, very calmly, "since I saw the clinic appointment on your insurance record. That might be excessive." The chapter on the second trimester was very detailed. Mirabelle sat down next to him. The receptionist called her name 8 minutes later. She stood up. She looked at Wu. He stood up too, and something shifted in the very regular air of that very regular clinic waiting room. Something that felt enormous and fragile and real, the way all the best things do. She did not know, walking through that door, that by the end of the week, 3 people would be dead. Someone she thought she knew would turn out to be a stranger wearing a familiar face, and the Golden Spire would be on fire. Not all fires are bad, but some of them take everything first. The fire started on Friday, on the 4th floor, in the server room. It was not an accident. Mirabelle was not in the building when it started. She was in her apartment, 30 minutes away, folding laundry and listening to a podcast about baby names, when her phone lit up with a message from Wu's number. "Stay home. Do not come in. I will explain when I can." She stared at the message for 2 seconds. Then she turned on the news. The Golden Spire Casino was on every local channel. Not burning down. The fire suppression system had activated immediately. The damage was contained to the 4th floor server room and the adjoining corridor, but the building was evacuated, and every camera in the city was pointed at it. And the words, "criminal investigation," were already appearing in the chirons at the bottom of the screen. Mirabelle sat on her couch and watched, and her mind was running very fast and very cold. The 4th floor, the server room, servers held records, records of transactions, financial records, movement records, the kind of data that could prove or disprove whether a shadow operation had been running through the Golden Spire's legitimate channels for the past several months. She picked up her phone and called Wu. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She tried Mr. Bach. Bach picked up in 1 ring, as always. "Mrs. Wells." His voice was tight but controlled. "Are you at home?" "Yes." "What happened?" "Someone accessed the server room at 2200 hours. The fire suppression was disabled first, manually, with an override code. The room was set alight remotely." A pause. "Mr. Wu is with the authorities. He's fine, please." A tiny crack in the professional voice. "He's fine." "Bach." Mirabelle gripped the phone. The evidence he had, about the shadow operation. "Was it in that server room?" Silence. Then quietly. "Most of it. Yes. But not all of it." Another silence. Longer. "Ms. Wells, I'm not asking you to tell me where the rest is," she said. "I am telling you to make sure Wu knows that I know what this is. Someone on the inside burned that room to protect themselves, and whoever it is, they knew exactly where to look." "Yes," Bach said very quietly. "We know." "Who is it?" "Ms. Wells." "Bach." Her voice was steady. She was surprised by how steady it was. "Who?" The name Bach said was one Mirabelle recognized, and not someone high up, not someone obvious. A middle manager in the operations division, unremarkable and efficient, who had been with the Golden Spire for 11 years, and whom Mirabelle had seen every single week in the East Corridor, because his office was adjacent to the maintenance hall, because he had a key to the gray door, because he was, now that she saw it clearly, exactly the kind of person you would not suspect if you were looking for someone spectacular, and exactly the kind of person you should suspect if you understood that real danger wore an ordinary face. His name was Greg Sutter. He was 51 years old, had 2 children, coached youth basketball on weekends, and had been funneling contraband shipments through the Golden Spire's maintenance infrastructure for 3 years. "He's gone," Bach said. "Left the building before the fire was reported. His apartment is cleared out." Mirabelle closed her eyes. He knew the moment Wu halted the Sunday shipment. Yes, he realized the investigation had gotten close, and he burned the evidence and ran. "Does Wu know it's him?" Wu confirmed it 40 minutes ago. He gave the name to the authorities. Mirabelle let out a long, slow breath. Okay. There is one other thing, Bach said. His voice had shifted, very slightly, but she had learned to hear his shifts. Greg Sutter did not work alone. His operation was connected to a larger network, one that has people in 3 other cities. The authorities believe that now that Sutter has run, the network may try to, he paused, tie off loose ends. Meaning anyone who may have overheard things, seen things. Another pause. Anyone who was in a staff elevator on a Friday night with 2 of their people. The silence in Mirabelle's apartment was very loud. They know about me, she said. We are not certain. But Mr. Wu has already arranged. I am not leaving my apartment at 2 in the morning to be moved somewhere back. Ms. Wells, I am 5 months pregnant. I know exactly 3 martial arts moves. None of them are good. And I am not going anywhere until Wu himself calls me and explains the plan. Her voice was completely flat. Those are my terms. A pause that she was fairly sure contained Mr. Bach, trying very hard not to smile. I'll pass that along. Wu called 11 minutes later. Mirabelle, are you actually okay? Yes. Bach said the server room is handled. The authorities have what they need from us. The backup records are stored off-site. Sutter didn't know about the secondary system. His voice was tired again. That deep bone tired. He destroyed 4 years of equipment, and he didn't get what he came for. And the network he was connected to. They are already moving. 2 of their people were arrested at the Southern Highway checkpoint an hour ago. A pause. There will be more. It will take time. Bach says they might come for me. A very specific kind of silence. I am aware. Wu, I need you to go with Bach tonight, he said. Not because you cannot manage. I know you can manage. But because you are carrying, he stopped. Because I cannot be in 2 places, and I need to be here until this is contained, and I need to know that you are somewhere I know is safe. Please. Mirabelle sat with that for a moment. Please, she repeated quietly, not mocking, turning it over. Wu Xiang-hyuk, who owned casinos and had Mafia connections, and kept backup servers, and managed crises without raising his voice, saying please to her in the middle of all of it, because she was the variable he was afraid of getting wrong. Okay, she said. Thank you. Where am I going? There is a house, 40 minutes from the city. It belongs to... A pause. It is secure. Bach knows it. You will be comfortable. Will you be there? As soon as I can. She packed a bag. Stephen the Succulent came too. Bach arrived at her door in 14 minutes in an unmarked car, and he looked at her bag, and then at Stephen, and said absolutely nothing, which she appreciated enormously. They drove out of the city while the Golden Spire's 4th floor was still being documented by investigators, and every news camera in Cheongju was pointing at a building that held, among many things, a rooftop garden and a broken camera in the East Corridor, and the specific memory of a December night that had changed the whole shape of Mirabelle's life. She held Stephen in her lap. The baby moved. For the first time, a tiny flutter, quick and certain, like a small heartbeat proving a point. Mirabelle looked out the window at the passing dark and felt something enormous shift inside her. Not fear. Something past it, and something that lived on the other side of fear and had been waiting for her to arrive. The house was in the hills. It was not large, but it was warm, real warmth, the lived-in kind. And when Bach opened the door and turned on the lights, Mirabelle looked around at the bookshelves and the worn kitchen table and the single photograph on the wall, and she knew, without asking, that this was not a safe house. This was Wu's home. His actual home. She turned to Bach. He sent me here, she said. Back's professional face was working overtime. It is the most secure location available, Ms. Wells. Back. Yes, Ms. Wells. Thank you, she said. For everything. For calling him when Martin. I have worked for Mr. Wu for 7 years, Back said, and his professional voice cracked just slightly along the edge. I have seen a great many things in that time. I have not. Until recently. He glanced at her, and then at Stephen, and then back at the door. Seen him pace, he said goodnight. Shui left. Mirabelle stood in Wu's home, looked at his bookshelves, which were chaotic and overfull, and organized in a way that made no obvious sense, but which she somehow understood immediately, and felt the baby flutter again. I know, she said quietly, to no one, to the room, to the flutter. I know. She made tea. She sat at the worn kitchen table. She waited. He came home at 4 a.m. He walked through the door and stopped when he saw her. At his kitchen table, in his home, and with Stephen on the table, and both hands around a mug, and her braids down from their cap, for the first time since he had ever seen her, falling around her face in thick, dark coils. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and everything that had been happening, the fire, the running, the investigation, the long, impossible night, receded for one moment to the edges of the room. Hi, she said. Hi, he said. He sat down across from her. Well, she pushed the extra mug she had poured, because she had known somehow when to pour it, across the table, and he wrapped both hands around it, and they sat in the kitchen at 4 a.m, in his house in the hills, in the middle of everything, and it was the most ordinary thing Mirabelle Wells had ever done. Is it over? She asked. Not entirely, he said. But the worst of it, he exhaled. The people who might have come for you have been detained. Sutter is in custody in the next city. The network is fractured. And the Golden Spire? 4th floor will need rebuilding. The rest is untouched. He turned his mug in his hands. The casino will reopen on Wednesday. Good. You don't have to come back, he said, to work there if you don't want to. Why wouldn't I? After everything, Woo Seong-hyuk. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. I like my job. I like the East Corridor. I like the Thursday mornings on the rooftop. A pause. Ma, I like the view from up there. He was quiet. Then, the view. The view, she agreed. Something in his face shifted. That warm, unguarded thing that was his real smile, the one she was beginning to know. It arrived slowly, like a light being turned up rather than switched on, and it changed his whole face. Mirabelle, he said. I want... He stopped, looked at the table, looked up. I have not been someone who... I have kept things at a distance for a long time. It has been practical. It has been necessary. And I am... A pause. Not good at this. Neither am I, she said. But I want to be. So do I. Outside, the hills were dark, and the city was a soft, distant glow. Stephen sat between them on the table, small and stubborn, having survived everything. The baby, Wu said. I was thinking, don't name it Stephen, Mirabelle said immediately. He looked at Stephen, looked at her. I was not going to suggest Stephen. Good. I was going to say, a pause. Mom, whatever you choose. I want to be part of choosing, if you want that. She put her mug down. She reached across the table, slowly, and put her hand on top of his. Neither of them spoke. The kitchen was warm. The baby was still. The night was almost over, and Mirabelle Wells, who had come to a country she did not expect to love, and found a life she had not known to look for, sat in the house on the hill and decided, quietly, completely, with her whole self, to stay. 3 months later, Greg Sutter stood in a courtroom and tried to make himself small. Mirabelle watched the news coverage of it on the small television in the hospital room, because that was where she was. Not because of anything the trial did to her, but because the baby had decided that the third morning of the trial was the correct time to arrive, with the particular impatient energy of someone who had been waiting long enough. Wu had not slept in 36 hours. He sat in the chair beside the hospital bed, and still in the clothes he had been wearing when Mirabelle had called him at 2 in the morning, and he had his phone in his hand, but he was not looking at it. He was watching her. Every few minutes he would ask if she needed water, or the nurse, or the blanket adjusted, and Mirabelle, who was exhausted and powerful and in no mood for nonsense, would say, "I'm fine," and mean it, because she was. She was fine. She was better than fine. She was bringing a person into the world, or in a hospital in Cheongju, with Stephen on the windowsill and Bach in the waiting room eating a 4-minute lunch in the hallway because he refused to go home. And she felt certain, solidly, unexpectedly, fully certain. The baby arrived at 6:47 in the morning. A girl, small and loud and entirely herself, with her mother's nose and her father's serious expression, and both of their stubbornness, for a very long time, which was the most for a very long time, which was the most emotional thing Mirabelle had ever seen from him, because she now understood that his silences were not empty. They were full. They were where he kept the things that mattered most. "She's real," he finally said. "Yes," Mirabelle said. "She is. She's—" He looked up. His eyes were doing something that she had never seen his eyes do. Something wet and undefended and completely unashamed. "Mirabelle, I know," she said. "I know." They named her Yeon Joy. Yeon for Korea and Joy for Mirabelle's grandmother, who had been a woman who kept succulents and said that any plant that survived a winter had earned the right to be proud. The trial concluded 7 weeks later. Greg Sutter received 12 years. 3 members of his network received additional sentences. The Golden Spire's 4th floor was rebuilt and reopened, cleaner and brighter than before, with a new server room and upgraded security and a broken camera in the East Corridor that was finally, properly fixed. Mirabelle went back to work. She was not a cleaning supervisor yet. That came 4 months later, when the head of operations retired and Wu restructured the department, and Mirabelle was offered the position in a meeting with 3 other people in the room, formally, properly, out on the record, which was something she had insisted on. No special treatment. No quiet favor. Her record spoke for itself, and it did, because she was good at her job, and everyone who worked with her knew it. "You didn't have to fight me on the process," Wu told her afterward. "Yes, I did," she said. "You know why." He did know why, because the Golden Spire was a place where people worked and deserved to see that advancement was about merit and not about who was close to the top. Because Mirabelle Wells had been a cleaning staff member who was shoved into a wall by a man who thought that power made him right, and she was not going to let the lesson of that become about her being close to Wu. The lesson was supposed to be about what happened to people like Martin Pill. Martin Pill, for what it was worth, had not done well in his reassignment. 3 more complaints. Transfer request denied. He resigned in March, and the last anyone heard, that he was managing a parking structure in a different city, and presumably still laboring under the misapprehension that he was better than the people around him. That was fine. Some things corrected themselves slowly. On the first Thursday morning after Mirabelle returned from maternity leave, she went to the rooftop. Yeon Joy was with Wu's mother, a small, formidable woman named Mrs. On Wu, who had arrived from her home city of Jeonju 2 weeks before the birth, and who had taken one look at Mirabelle and said, in excellent English, "You are not what I expected," and then hugged her, which was not the order Mirabelle had anticipated things going. The rooftop was cold, and the city was waking up, and Stephen, who had been promoted from the hospital windowsill to the rooftop garden, where he sat in a dedicated pot with a small identification tag that Bach had made, without being asked, was doing fine. Mirabelle stood at the railing and drank her breakfast tea and looked at Cheongju. She heard the door open. "You're going to be early every Thursday for the rest of your life," Wu said. "You're going to be slightly less early every Thursday for the rest of yours," she said. He came to stand beside her. Yeonjoy's favorite stuffed animal, a small yellow bear that she had already managed to lose twice and recover from behind the washing machine both times, was somehow in his jacket pocket. He pulled it out, looked at it, and put it back. "She left it in the car," he said. "She leaves it everywhere. She's going to make us find that bear in 16 different countries before she's 10. Probably." They looked at the city. "Are you happy?" he asked. Not the casual version of that question. The real one. The one that meant, are you actually, genuinely, in your bones, happy? Mirabelle thought about a December dinner and a window and city lights. She thought about a narrow hallway and a floor that a man crouched on in a good jacket to pick up spilled supplies. She thought about a rooftop and a tangerine and an elevator conversation that had unraveled a criminal network. She thought about a hospital room at 6:47 in the morning and a baby who arrived with her mind already made up. "Yes," she said. He reached out and took her hand. She let him. The city of Cheongju stretched below them, bright and enormous, and completely unaware that it was being watched by two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, in the middle of the most complicated of situations, and decided, separately and then together, to stay. But Stephen said nothing. Stephen was a succulent. Stephen had seen everything and survived all of it, and sat in the morning air like a small green declaration of resilience. Mirabelle looked at Wu. He looked back at her, and the morning was full. The first date was not planned. That was the thing about Woo Seung-hyuk. He did not announce things. He simply did them, quietly and completely, and let the doing speak for itself. And so when he showed up at Mirabelle's apartment on a Saturday morning, with Yeonjoy strapped to his chest in a carrier, facing outward, because she had recently decided that facing inward was beneath her dignity, and a bag from the bakery 2 streets over, Mirabelle did not ask where they were going. She put on her coat. She put Stephen by the window so he could get some light. And she followed. They walked to the outdoor market that ran along the riverside every Saturday, from 8 until noon, a long stretch of vendors selling vegetables and handmade things, and street food, and plants, and secondhand books. Yeonjoy, who was 4 months old and had opinions about everything, greeted the market with wide eyes and one very decisive fist thrust forward, as though she was approving it personally. "She likes it," Mirabelle said. "She likes everything loud," Wu said. He adjusted the carrier strap with one hand. "She will probably want to run this market by the time she is 6. 7, Mirabelle said. "She'll spend a year studying it first." Wu looked at her, that warm, slow smile. "Yes, that is exactly right." They moved through the stalls. Mirabelle stopped at a woman selling hand-dyed fabric and spent 10 full minutes asking questions about the dyeing process, while Wu stood beside her, holding a small paper cup of barley tea, and listening with what Mirabelle had come to recognize as his genuine interest face, which looked almost identical to his neutral face, except for a very slight tilt of his head. He bought 2 lengths of the fabric before she could reach for her bag, and when she raised an eyebrow, he said very simply, "You clearly wanted them." "I was still deciding." "You had already decided. You were just negotiating with yourself." This was, unfortunately, accurate. They ate rice cakes from a paper tray at a riverside bench, passing the tray between them, while Yeonjoy regarded a nearby pigeon with the focused intensity of someone planning a detailed investigation. The river was bright. A child somewhere behind them was flying a kite shaped like a fish. The city had the specific Saturday ease of a place that had briefly agreed to relax. "Can I ask you something?" Mirabelle said. "Yes." "Your mother, when she came, before Yeonjoy was born, she hugged me before she said anything else. Yes. She had never met me. No. Why? Wu looked at the river. I had told her about you, he said, for several months before she came. Not everything, but enough. A pause. She said that anyone I described that carefully was someone worth knowing. Mirabelle turned to look at him. You described me carefully, she said. You are a person who deserves to be described carefully. The pigeon departed. Yonjoy watched it go with great suspicion. Mirabelle looked back at the river and tried to organize her face, because something Wu said always arrived with more weight than she was expecting, and she needed a moment. Your mother is coming back in spring, she said. She is coming back in March, he confirmed. She says she needs to inspect the rooftop garden. She wants to see Stephen. She brought Stephen a ceramic pot from Jeonju. I know. It is nicer than anything else in my apartment. Wu looked briefly like he wanted to say something about that, and then decided not to, which Mirabelle appreciated, because they were both still learning where the edges were, and she liked that he paid attention to them. They walked home slowly, the long way, along the river path, and back through the side streets. Yeonjoy fell asleep in the carrier somewhere between the bookshop and the corner, with the orange-painted wall, her small head tipping sideways in the absolute boneless surrender of infant sleep. She trusts you completely, Mirabelle said. She was watching the way Wu kept one steadying hand on Yeonjoy's back as he walked, without thinking about it, automatically, the way people do things they have already made into habit. She trusts everyone, Wu said. She gets that from you. I don't trust everyone. No, he agreed. But you trust the right people, eventually. And you teach her that everything is worth looking at. He glanced at her. She looks at everything the same way you do, like it deserves her full attention. Mirabelle walked in silence for half a block. Woo Seong-hyuk, she said. You have to stop saying things like that in public. Why? Because I have nowhere to put them. He looked at her with that warm, quiet look. You have time, he said. There is no rush. The second date was Yeonjoy's idea, in the way that babies have ideas, entirely through inconvenience and perfect timing. She was 6 months old when she developed a complete fixation on the aquarium advertisement that played on the television every morning. Not the fish, not the coral, the sea turtles. Every time a sea turtle appeared on screen, she produced a sound that Mirabelle described as a small person discovering electricity, and Wu described as possibly the best sound I have ever heard. So they took her to the aquarium. Bak drove them, because Bak had decided somewhere around Yeonjoy's second month of life that being her unofficial honorary uncle was simply his situation now, and he had made peace with it. He wore his professional expression the entire way to the aquarium, and then immediately abandoned it the moment Yeonjoy grabbed his finger in the parking lot. The aquarium was large and blue-lit and full of families. Mirabelle carried Yeonjoy through the long underwater tunnel where the rays glided overhead, and slow and vast, and watched her daughter's face go completely still. That deep, absorbed stillness that was so clearly inherited that Mirabelle felt the recognition of it in her chest. She does that, Mirabelle said, when she is really, truly looking at something. Wu was beside her, watching Yeonjoy watch the rays. Yes, he said. I know where she gets it. You do the same thing, I have been told. By who? By Bak, repeatedly, usually when I am looking at you. Mirabelle looked up at him. Our rays are very large, he said. Rays are very large, he said. Very impressive. You are changing the subject. I'm appreciating marine life, Yeonjoy shrieked with pure joy. The sea turtles had arrived. The three of them stood in the blue light of the turtle tank for 20 minutes. Yeonjoy pressed one palm flat against the glass, and the largest turtle drifted close, so enormous and ancient and entirely unbothered, and regarded them all with a calm that suggested it had seen everything and found it acceptable. "I want to come back," Mirabelle said. "We will come back," Wu said. "Every month. Every month. She is going to make us members." She already has Bach looking at the membership tiers. Mirabelle started laughing. Real laughter. The kind that comes from somewhere uncomplicated and warm. And Yonjoy turned to look at her mother, and then laughed too. Because she always laughed when Mirabelle laughed, as though joy was something you learned by watching the people you loved. The third date was Mirabelle's. She planned it. Properly, quietly, on a Tuesday evening, while Yeonjoy was asleep, and Wu's mother was visiting, and had taken over the apartment kitchen in a way that Mrs. Wu did not so much ask permission for as simply make happen. Mirabelle told Wu to be ready at 7, and not to wear anything he minded getting slightly flowery, that he arrived at 7. He looked at her, then at her own flour-dusted apron, and said, "Cooking class." "Cooking class," she confirmed. It was a small neighborhood class. 6 people around a long kitchen table, a cheerful instructor named Hyon, who was very patient with beginners, and a menu for the evening that included doenjang jjigae, japchae, and a rice dessert that Mirabelle had been determined to learn since the first time she tasted it. Wu was, it turned out, a better cook than he had let on. He moved around the kitchen with the same quiet efficiency he brought to everything, chopping vegetables with a precision that made Hyon pause and say something complimentary in rapid Korean that Mirabelle only half caught. "He said your knife work is very good," Mirabelle told Wu. "I grew up in a house with no restaurant budget, and a grandmother who believed that a person who could not feed themselves was a person at the mercy of everyone else," Wu said. He swept the vegetables into the pot without looking at her. She was very small and extremely correct about most things. "She sounds like Mrs. Wu." "My mother is exactly like her. It is the continuity of a particular kind of woman." He looked at Mirabelle sideways. "The kind who knows what they want and goes after it without making a speech about it." Mirabelle stirred her jjigae. "Are you complimenting me or describing your grandmother?" "Both," he said. "It is efficient." The food they made was good, better than Mirabelle expected from a beginner class, actually, and they ate it at the long table with the other 4 participants, a mixed group of ages, who were cheerful and curious, and asked them how long they had been together with the casual friendliness of strangers at a shared table. Mirabelle and Wu looked at each other. "A year," Mirabelle said, which was, roughly, the truth. It was the December dinner, plus 12 months, plus everything that had happened in between, and she had decided at some point that the counting started there, with city lights, and a window, and a man who listened like she was worth listening to. Wu looked at her with his real smile, the full one, for just a moment. "A year," he agreed. Spring arrived, and with it, Wu's mother, a ceramic pot for Stephen, and the news that Mirabelle had passed her Korean language proficiency exam, the intermediate level, which she had been studying for in the early mornings, before Yeonjoy woke up, sitting at the kitchen table with flashcards and an audio program, and the specific determination of a person who had decided that if she was going to stay somewhere, she was going to understand it fully. She told Wu after the results came in. She was at work on the rooftop Thursday morning, breakfast in hand. He read the result on the printout she gave him. He looked up. "You have been studying since September," he said. "October," she corrected. "I started October." "Without telling me." "I wanted to be sure first." He looked at the printout again, then at her, then at the city. "Mirabelle." "It is a practical skill," she said briskly. "The building operates primarily in Korean, and my supervisory role requires Mirabelle. Clear communication across all Mirabelle." His voice was not loud. To stay fully. Not just with your presence to stay fully. Not just with your presence, but with all of it. The language and the city and... He stopped, looked at the printout, put it in his jacket pocket. "I do not take it for granted." I want you to know that I do not take a single part of it for granted." The rooftop was quiet. Somewhere in the garden, a small bird had taken a considerable interest in Stephen. "I know you don't," Mirabelle said. They stood at the railing with their breakfast, and the morning, and the city below them, and the whole long, unlikely year between them. Jan Joy was at home with Mrs. Wu, probably being taught something formidable about self-sufficiency. Bach was downstairs, 4 minutes into his lunch. The golden spire hummed below and around them, rebuilt and open, full of people trying their luck. And Mirabelle Wells hadn't come to Cheongju looking for any of this. She had come for a job and a clean apartment and a fresh start. And she had found, without planning it, without expecting it, in the middle of a narrow hallway and a broken camera, and a December night that had changed the whole map of her life. Something that fit. Not perfectly. Nothing fit perfectly. There were still hard conversations and complicated histories, and a man who had inherited a world she was still learning to navigate, and a baby who would grow up between two cultures and carry both of them in her name. But it fit the way real things fit, with some edges and some adjustment, and the ongoing willingness to keep showing up. "Stephen is being looked at by a bird," Wu said. "Stephen has survived worse," Mirabelle said. "True." The bird lost interest and flew away. The city kept going. So Jan Joy, 40 minutes away, was presumably already planning her future. And on the rooftop of the Golden Spire, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of ways stood in the morning light and let the day begin. Mirabelle came to a country she never planned to love, survived everything it threw at her, and built something real from the rubble. And that is exactly what courage looks like when no one is watching. Subscribe now so every new story lands right where you are. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the right people always find their way to each other.